What's up, y'all? I'm Omari Akil, and you are watching The Breakdown. This is a show where I put my game designer brain to work to try to understand and describe what goes into creating the game that we're going to be looking at this week. But I'm not completely alone in this process. I get some help from the designers themselves. Now, I've reached out already and gotten some information about their inspiration and what it was like to design the game. Now, it's time to share that with you. And so today, I'm going to be talking about Hey Cutie. And no, there's not a gorgeous person standing behind the there is, but never mind. Hey Cutie is the name of a new dating sim card game from One Monkey Method. Now, this is their second published game. The first was called Heroes Crossing, and both were designed by Brian Sowers. Now, in order to talk about the design, you need to know generally how the game works. In Hey Cutie, you're trying to go on as many dates with your crushes as you can. It's a mix of drawing, playing, and discarding cards so you can eventually go on dates. And occasionally, you have the opportunity to get in the way of your opponents dating someone. So now, let's talk design. Now, this game is made up entirely of cards. And sometimes that's a design choice, but I know that isn't the case here since I was able to play an earlier version of Hey Cutie that had a few more components. It included some player boards and a few tokens. Brian mentioned to me one of the things they really wanted to focus on with Hey Cutie was its casualness, keeping it accessible, quick and easy to teach and play. Now, a quick look at the cards and I think they've achieved their goal. It's mostly art with a number, an icon, and in some cases a few lines of text that pertain to gameplay. But most of the text is actually purely for flavor. Mechanically, the game is quite casual. It's set collection with a few twists. Brian mentions that one of his primary inspirations for the game was PC dating sims. So that core idea that you're building up a personality that will make you desirable to your love interest is right at the heart of Hey Cutie. Because of that, I'm guessing that they probably developed the crush cards and the traits that are on them pretty early in the design process. And these are the cards that define the sets that you're trying to collect. Let's take a look at a crush card. Now, this is Lady Dracula, and these 4 sets of icons and numbers represent exactly the traits you need to collect in order to date her. There are 4 traits: charm, brains, edge, and looks. The player's objective is to try to match these traits exactly with flirt cards from their hand. And this is a flirt card, pickup line, which gives you 2 points in the edge trait. The flirt cards range from 1 to 3 in any of the 4 traits, and a small number of them are wild, while the crush cards can go as high as 8 in a single trait, as you can see in this one. This construction makes the way you acquire flirt cards one of the most crucial mechanics in the game. Brian admits that it was one of the more challenging parts of the game to design. He describes several methods of getting cards, including one that eventually was cut due to potentially high production costs. The final version uses a combination of a single flirt card deck and 2 discard piles, where the top card of each discard is also available to draw from on your turn. Brian let me know that this design choice was inspired by gin rummy, which he learned from his mom as a kid. Now I have to admit, the only classic card games I know are Spades and Solitaire, so I actually had to look up the rules for this one to be able to compare. So in Gin Rummy, you can draw from a deck of face-down cards or the top card from the discard. And yeah, that totally sounds familiar. It's important to note that when you're designing games, especially those on the casual end of the spectrum, you want to be very mindful of how many choices you give to the players. In the case of Gin Rummy, the player's first choice is between the known and the unknown. It's a card you can see from the top of the discard, or a random card from the top of the deck. This is a simple but important choice. You'll also need to discard a card at the end of the turn, and this is a second choice, considering what cards you don't need for your own objectives, but also thinking about what cards the player following you might need and trying not to give it to them as you place on the discard. And certainly other modern games use this kind of mechanic. Arboretum is one that comes immediately to mind because the entire game is based on your ability to manage this process really well. Hey Cutie adds to this card drawing mechanic in 2 ways. First, by showing you exactly which type of card you're going to be drawing from the deck, since it's displayed on the card back. providing you just a little bit more information about the decision you need to make. The second change is adding another discard pile. So this forces you to think about which card you want to cover up when it comes time to discard a card to try to prevent other players from getting them. Now, as a designer, it's always nice to see other designers going back to the classics for inspiration. Gin Rummy is maybe a 100-year-old game and is still around for a reason. And so many of these games that use classic cards are here because they were well designed. So there's no shame in going back and using that as the basis for new games. It's also absolutely important to make sure that the game you're working on is enjoyable to play. But that can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So making sure that you get feedback and use that during the process is absolutely important. All players in Hey Cutie will have one face-up public crush and one face-down secret crush in front of them throughout the game. Now, you can look at your own secret crush at any time, and you're the only one who can attempt to date them. Other players can actually steal your public crush as long as they can meet the trait requirements on their turn. Now, Brian specifically mentions playtesters giving very positive feedback when they added this crush stealing mechanic into the game. Also, whenever any player goes on a date with someone, a new public or secret crush is added to the game, giving players a few more potential objectives and some flexibility if they aren't getting what they need for their own crushes. To add a little more variety to the overall gameplay, Brian added an item and power cards. Now, these cards have a strong link to the theme, and they allow players to bend and sometimes break from the normal rules of play. One example is a Fedora card. This card is played on an opponent, and it forces them to burn extra flirt cards whenever they try to go on a date. Now, whether or not you focus on item cards or ignore them is just another choice that players get to make. Hey Cutie funded successfully on Kickstarter just a couple of weeks ago. So if this sounds like the type of game that you would want to date, head over to the campaign page, get some more info, or you can pre-order and get a copy before it ships. And again, I'm Omari Akil, and you just watched the breakdown of Hey Cutie. See you next time.